In September 2010, I wanted to do a research. I wanted to do some research on best practice of disability in America, because equally there in front of us so some things, but equally we're in front of them on some things as well, including personal budgets as full known out there. So the first place I went to Washington DC, and the first place I visited was an organisation called Equality Plus, who support young people in the state of Columbia who have a disability. So they may support them. They support them in legal matters and advocate for them on lots of different things, including to make sure that they're having a good quality life. And at the end of the day, they tally it up and say, what is best practice? What shows best practice? So I learned a lot of them as well. The next place I visited was TASH. TASH is an organisation for parents with children with disabilities, and to make sure that they have an inclusive education. And TASH has been running for more than 30 years to make sure that they were actually having an education alongside their peers and actually being involved in activities as well. The next man who I visited was Bob Williams, who's the head of a project of social security in America, and it was quite interesting to meet Bob, because he's actually a guy with a disability. He communicates through a Dynabox, and that must have been the longest meeting what I had in America, but interesting at the same time. The next place I visited was Minneapolis, which I met the founder of Partners in Policy Making, Colin Wick. Partners in Policy Making originally came from America. It was designed in 1986 by Colin Wick. He had some money left over, and he decided, how could we make sure families are being heard and young people with a disability, because she was on the board of ARC, which is the equivalent of MenCap over here, and she wasn't seeing any self-advocates coming through and telling them what they felt. So she decided to come up with Partners in Policy Making. Partners in Policy Making gradually came over here in 1996 by a woman called Linnell Elwell, who still is running Partners today. Then I met some self-advocates. We kind of talked about what's the difference between a self-advocate in the States and America. And Minneapolis has been funding self-advocacy for 50 years to make sure that their voices have been being heard. The next place that I went to go and visit, I went to go and visit the International Conference on Inclusion in Toronto, where Toronto is kind of in front of America just a little bit, on how to get people into the community, kind of what you've been speaking about this morning of the best. How can we do it the best way to get people with a disability into the community and make sure that the voices are being heard there. The last place was New York, the place that I wanted to visit, if you could remember from my first path what I did. I met Dr. Beth Mount, who facilitates, who comes up with tools on what's the best way of getting, making people with a disability to be heard when it comes to their transition phase, using lots of tools like the path and some tools a little bit different from the path. The next person I met was Bernard Carabello. Bernard lived in an state institution called Willowgok for 20 years. When he came out of the institution, they thought Bernard had just a learning disability. And it just turned out that Bernard had a physical disability, which was cerebral palsy. Then he founded the National Self-Advocacy Association of New York, which they do some disability awareness to many companies around New York. The most thing what was coming out of my visit when I went to America was employment. America, as equally as it possibly is that we're in front of them, and there are lots of different things of getting people a personal budget and an individual budget. There's been lots of things in the media recently of getting people with a disability actually to be employed and to be employment. The actual key message what was coming out of America was employment, and it seems that they listen to people with a disability more than we actually do over here, to actually find out, instead of finding out what they actually want to do in life of a career, they actually go back to the path or any transition tools what they might have done. I've got some like information as long as my arm. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm gonna just pick out some key factors so you can understand a little bit more. Employment seems to be the message, the key employment. It was going back to what their gifts and talents are. So what a person's gift was, because we all have gifts and talents, and we have a disability or not. Each one of us in this room may have a gift that somebody else doesn't have, what we can bring to the workplace. And they did something over in America which I don't have enough in the UK of customized employment, where they ask the employer what's not being actually used in your organisation. What you could get somebody who has got a good gift to come out. I think the lesson is we can all learn something. If you work with a person in the future, and you work in the employment sector for people with a disability, and you want to find out what they actually want, go back to the gift. So there was a gift of a guy in America. He liked to put something in order. So a dentist in Minneapolis, instead of getting rid of every single file because it was going on computer database, but they still wanted it, he actually employed him because he was actually good at the alphabet, and now that's worked. We all need to be a part of the key to the future, because having the key to the future for a person to employ, to be what they actually want to do, and to actually use one of their gifts to be actually employed, rather than dismissing their gifts like the government seems to be doing, or some organisations seem to be doing. Try to make sure that your council is kind of some of the first ones to do it. And yes, we are going through some financial times, but making sure that a person's gift is actually being used as their job and their talent rather than something else, you'll get better outcomes. Climbing that mountain, we all climb a mountain every day of our lives, no matter how fast or slow we go. The support is amongst you all. So I just want to leave you with a snapshot of my new life. Thank you for listening.